Listeners, it has been a very pleasant day for me with our Superintendent of Police, Shri Vishal, IPS, and we have had the pleasure of traveling to Kohima. And as we are returning back, it's almost 9:30, but we are stopping by with our good old friend, Mr. Steve Odyuo, who is the chairman of the Natural Nagas. With the news flushing in the social media as well as the papers that Amur Falcons in Mokokchung are being welcomed with catapults and guns, we just thought that it'll be a nice time to have a little chit chat with Steve while our SP is here. So, first of all, I'd like to give a little time to Steve and let him introduce the Amur Falcon to our listeners.
Thank you, Bendang, for the time. I would like to take you all through the Amur Falcon conservation which has been happening in Nagaland. A small brief about the Amur Falcon migration I want to give you is that they have the breeding grounds in the southeast of Siberia and the northeast of China. As they make the 20,000 kilometer long flight to the African continent, they make a short refueling stop in Nagaland. They stay over for nearly 2 months. That's like from October to the last part of November. What they do is, like, before they make the long flight across the Arabian Sea, they sort of refuel and fatten themselves up with the flying termites, which like erupts during this season and all. And then they try to get themselves fit for the last leg of the journey to Africa. The stopover basically is for food, and like as you know, Nagaland, not like the rest of mainland India, it's an organic place. So like you can imagine how many insects like you find in the skies. So here they normally stop over in the northeast because of this. And then when they move out of Nagaland, they have this non-stop flight which they go across the Arabian Sea for 2 to 3 days and nights. Like they fly over. In fact, some say like they fly in autopilot. Okay. Yeah. So without any sleep, they have to cross the sea towards the African continent. But meantime, what I want to say is the benefits of having the Amur Falcons stopping over in Nagaland is they can help rid us of the pests. And then through that, we can say that in fact they are helping us with the crops. In fact, birds, bats and insects help in pollination of 75% of all crop types. But then again, the birds and bats are the ones which control the pests and protects the crops, and sometimes like even the disease that is caused to human beings. So, like I mentioned, the Amur Falcon conservation in Nagaland, it started somewhere in the first part of 2011-12, and then right now it's become quite a big success story. But I've mentioned before also during a interview that conservation has to come out from the heart. Actually, what's happening right now is when we say conservation, we try to bribe the community to do conservation. So what happens is when the funds and the money stops, then conservation also stops. And so we should not let those things happen. I think like it's high time that we all think about conservation as a part of our life.
Thank you for introducing our listeners to the Amur Falcon community, Mr. Steve. A question for our SP here. So you are from mainland India. How is the conservation picture out there?
Thank you so much for having the opportunity to share thoughts on this particular topic. In the rest of India, usually the wildlife protection measures that are very well mentioned through our various acts, among which the foremost is the Wildlife Protection Act 1972. Most of the wildlife species are given adequate protection measures, adequate attention from not only the conservation and protection point of view, but in terms of providing them with the necessary habitat to help in their propagation. So, although I'm not a subject expert in this area, but in general, the various enforcement measures which is taken in coordination with the forest department as well as the district administration the rest of India sees a very healthy scenario. But that goes with also the note that the violations of such protection measures are also reported in significant numbers in rest of India as well. Thank you.
Well, thank you, sir, for letting us know that things are a little different in other parts of our country. Well, Steve, now coming back again, you have been trying to conserve the falcons as well as other species of animals. How far have you been successful in propagating your strategies with the local people?
Before I come to that, I wanted to add some few points about the protection of the Amur falcons. The Amur falcons are protected under the Convention of Migratory Species under the UN, where India is a signatory. So that is also one very important part of the Amur falcon protection. And then again, I wanted to mention that in 2013, the Chief Minister during World Environment Day, he made a speech where he had mentioned that various grants and assistance to villages will be reviewed and curtailed if Amur falcons are found to be hunted or trapped. Okay. So in 12 June 2013, the Chief Secretary of Nagaland had given a circular to all the village council, and this is one of the most important steps that the government has taken so far, and it's one of the most effective steps for the conservation of Amur falcons actually. So here the Forest Department and the RD Department are to coordinate actually. Okay. So when we talk about the coordination of various departments, we have to also rope in the different departments from all over Nagaland, because there are so many schemes by so many different departments which contradicts the main issue of conservation actually. For example, like when I come to talk about other wildlife, especially the human-elephant conflict, we find out that most of the foothill areas, these are all rubber plantations supported by some departments, land resource or various allied departments. So these are all monocultured plantations, and these have fragmented the habitats of the wildlife actually. And because of that, now the elephants are being pushed up into the hills. And that's why in Wokha district actually now you find trapped elephants in the Doyang Valley. Conservation, it's going to be a whole lifelong effort actually, because conservation, human-animal conflict, like it's going to be there as long as the earth exists. But for us to soften the blows or maybe try to find out how to coexist with the animals, it all depends on how we formulate policies. That's some policies which we have to make with the stakeholders, the communities in the grassroots. So when I want to say about the success of conservation, right now it's just a big effort that we are trying to put up, and the success will depend on the community.
Well, I suppose you have been very humble to not credit yourself with the success that you have brought in, especially conservation of the Amur falcons. One thing that I would like to have your perspective is you are trying so hard, putting in all your resources, time and energy to conserve the falcons over here, especially in Wokha district, whereas in other parts of our state, some other picture is taking place. How do you feel about it then?
See, one thing which I feel that the government or maybe NGOs should do in Nagaland is that we should try to create awareness actually. In fact, I would like to say that awareness is the right weapon for conservation at the moment. If we talk about people who we have been working with, these are the people like who never knew what was going on in the rest of the world. When we brought in awareness about conservation, about the whole biodiversity or the whole ecosystem works, the community, they have been very receptive in fact. It's just that they're waiting for people to bring in awareness to them. So what I feel is instead of pumping in money or trying to create infrastructures, we have to start awareness first. Only after awareness has been done, then I think like we have to try to help them with some sustainable and alternative livelihood issues,
Well, that's a very good concept that you have regarding the conservation, by which you mean creating of awareness. But looking at the ground realities, many a times it is not so easy to reach all the people, give knowledge, or create the same level of awareness amongst the whole general population. And at times like that, what do you feel is a good measure?
Nagaland is in a transitional period actually, not politically, but even when it comes to economic part of any normal citizen. So everyone thinks about the economy, their financial problems, instead of thinking about the conservation. Our NGO, it's called the Natural Nagas. Why do we call ourselves the Natural Nagas? I feel that Nagas, we are all sort of natural biologists. Mostly you'll find a lot of Nagas who know about the name of birds, plants, animals, flowers. With due respect, if we talk about the general part of mainland India, I think like the Nagas are more aware of our nature. So in that way, like what I feel is we are quite close to nature. We know what to eat, what not to eat, what to use during our ailments or for any purpose. We always go to our natural resources for building or anything. Like we go to our forests and we try to live with the forests. So actually, in fact, that is not an excuse for us to be still thinking that we are hunters and gatherers. We have to leave that concept now. But then like we have to be proud that we know a lot about nature. So I think now we have to go back to our nature. In fact, we have to exploit our skills, the skills of survival that most of the Nagas we have. For Naga, like you can go and live in the jungle for weeks also, like you can survive on any leaf or roots or anything. So those skills and all should be, in fact, exploited now. Now we have to come out of a hunter-gatherer sort of a system. And then, in fact, like with our knowledge of the forest, I think that's where like economy, our livelihood will all come in.
Thank you for sharing your point of view with our listeners. But on the other context, since our SP is also seated here, I would like to make a query. What can the law enforcing agency, such as the district police force, do to do away with the caption which I have mentioned at the beginning, that the Amur Falcons are being welcomed with catapults and guns in Mokokchung?
The information related to the prospective hunting of wild animals, including the Amur falcon, has definitely caught the social media. To put the facts on ground, as per the report from the Forest Department, they are currently holding an extensive survey in order to verify the findings which has come about from various sections of the society, particularly in Mokokchung I can mention. Therein again, I would like to remind our listeners regarding the legal part of it. From Wildlife Protection Act 1972, Section 9 and Section 51 criminalizes any activity related to hunting, trapping, killing, selling for food or possession or otherwise of any kind of wildlife species, wherein the punishment can go up to 3 years of rigorous imprisonment and a substantial piece of fine or both. Therein, I will just bring our listeners, since the Amur Falcons have already come to our land for their yearly roasting. Amur Falcons are similarly wildlife species which is protected under the Wildlife Protection Act 1972. So, any activity related to hunting, trapping, killing or selling of Amur falcons for food or possession or otherwise is a criminal offence. And this is punishable with up to 3 years of rigorous imprisonment or with fine of up to rupees 25,000 or both. And to the credit of the Forest Department in Mokokchung and the corresponding acknowledgement of the efforts from the district administration, the district administration has come out with a clear order wherein they have given out that any action related to the mentioned activities in reference to Amur Falcons will entail an appropriate legal enforcement, be against any individual or groups which are found to indulge in any of the activities, which for the sake of listeners I will again repeat, which includes hunting, trapping, killing or selling of Amur falcons. And it can be for food, for their possession or otherwise. So I would again urge all the towns and villages of Mokokchung district that please be part of the conservation and help us create an environment where the yearly guests find a home rather than a trap. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. Well, Steve, it seems the legal provisions will act enough for conserving of our feathered friends. But apart from that, is there anything else that you would also like to appeal to the people, to the listeners, and also would like to suggest to the district police force that you would prefer this kind of aid or that kind of help from them as well?
I would like to add something which I just mentioned about the natural Nagas and how we Nagas actually we are natural biologists. That's what I was saying. Now I would like to again add another thing about our Naga way of life. Actually Nagas, we like living sort of an outdoor life and in nature. We have skills for survival in the wild, like I had mentioned earlier. We can conserve nature's generous resources and use it in a sustainable way. In fact, we can turn these activities into eco-friendly and sustainable livelihood, catering to those who will pay to enjoy the life we live. That's how I think, in fact, through conservation, we can earn a living. I would like to suggest that we conserve the beautiful biodiversity and nature, because without wildlife, there will be no attraction. Conserve Earth's resources for future generation. Enjoy the present and keep the nature in its pristine form for our children. So here again, I would like to say that we have to remove some of our negative attitudes, like selfishness and greed from our mindset, and cultivate attitude for the sake of humanity. In fact, when we talk about selfishness and greed, one particular incident or maybe I have faced with a lot of people is that people, they say that if I don't hunt, if I don't kill that animal, someone else will kill that animal. So I think we should try to forget those negative attitudes now. We should not talk about the selfish part, but we should talk about the positive attitude where we should say that I shall not hunt and I will not allow others to hunt too. I think that's the positive side we can take also. And we have to understand that even our own survival is at stake actually. So we have to understand that the animal's future, the wildlife's future is also our future. In fact, let's all conserve across territories and borders. We should not think that we have to conserve only up to some certain extent or some borders, because the wildlife, some are migratory, some are endemic. But then if we are to protect animals and get benefits out of it, we have to protect across territories and borders. So we should think about a planet that we are living in. It's just one planet and we don't have any plan B. So we have to really work hard to conserve our earth. And for the last part, when we talk about the enforcers, for an NGO, we can spread awareness, we can create awareness, we can reach out to the community, and we can try to educate them on conservation. But then when it comes to hunting, and when it comes to wildlife crime, an NGO, we don't have the authority to enforce any punishment or any penalty. So I hope the forest department, the administration, the police, they do the overtime job. They're going to do the hard part. They're going to work very hard. But then unless they enforce it, just with awareness alone, conservation will not work.
And sir, is there anything more else that you would like to add up?
I would just like to tell the listeners that Mokokchung Police stands shoulder to shoulder with Forest Department and District Administration in ensuring that the culprits indulging in the earlier mentioned activities for creating disturbance or bringing danger to the wildlife will not be spared, and every effort will go into ensuring that all such activities are handled and dealt with the appropriate provisions of the law as earlier mentioned, and together with the awareness that the forest department brings about, along with the support from the frontline organizations like the natural Nagas, enforcement will play the supporting role so that we all have beautiful wildlife among us. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. With the kind of dedication that the NGO has and the commitment that the district law agency has, I hope and believe that conservation will not just remain a dream, but will practically come into action, and that we will be able to have a more beautiful environment, not only for our feathered friends or the animals, but for us as well. So, as I already mentioned earlier, it's pre-led. So, listeners, this is all we have with Mr. Steve of the Natural Nagas, the chairman, and our respected SP, Mokokchung. Shri Vishal, IPS. Thank you.